Hello lovelies, welcome back. My name is Tehja and today we have another super exciting video. This is the pattern making video for the Doja Cat Say So dress. For this celebrity transformation, I had to sew the dress from scratch because, you know, homegirl on a budget. So it's a perfect beginner project. So if you'd like to know how to make the pattern for this Doja Cat Say So dress, please keep on watching. So here are the timestamps for this video, just in case you need to jump to any portion, and also all the materials for this pattern making video will be linked down below. So we're starting out with the front dress pattern piece. For pattern paper, I'm actually using my classic craft pattern paper, but in the next clip, you'll see me using actually pieces of printer paper taped together. So anyway, I'm going to grab a turtleneck bodysuit from American Apparel. So you can use any turtleneck bodysuit that you have, or a shirt, or if you have a dress, that's perfect. And I'm going to make sure that the half line, the symmetrical line of the bodysuit, if you fold it in half, that point that is laying on the straight edge of the craft paper. So pretty much half of the bodysuit is laying on the craft paper. So now I'm tucking in the turtleneck for the bodysuit because that'll be a separate pattern piece, so we don't need it to sketch out for this front pattern piece. You also don't need to use a turtleneck if you don't have one. You can use a regular clothing piece that just has sleeves. And then, you know, we can work from there because the turtleneck pattern piece is really easy to draft. But anyway, now we're just sketching out half of the bodysuit at the collar, but I just make sure I sketched out the front collar instead of the back collar because the back collar rises up a little bit more. Then I sketched out the shoulder traced out the shoulder, and now I'm tracing out the armhole. And so I'm making sure that I fold back the sleeve and then following along that seam line where the sleeve is connected to the armhole, and just kind of tracing out that curve. And then I'm tracing out the rest of the bodysuit until I get to the hip, because since it's a bodysuit, obviously it's not going to be like a dress. So I just trace it out until I reach the hip. And we're going to actually grab a dress, also from American Apparel. Now you don't have to do this, you can kind of like guesstimate and just continue the lines down until whatever length you want the dress to be, but I decided to use a dress because it's just a little bit easier to get the shapes right. So I made sure that the kind of armpit, you know, of the dress matched up to the armpit of our pattern piece, and I'm laying it also only half of the dress onto the pattern paper, and kind of just like making sure that everything hits right, that the waist is at the right place and the hips are at the right place. So I'm just tracing from the armpit down to the waist and then down to the hips, which the waist kind of came in a little bit more, so that's fine if you needed to correct it. I actually used a different marker because I knew there would be some corrections. But anyway, I just traced the rest of the dress all the way down into the length that I wanted it to be, which ended up being a pretty good length for me, but if you want to extend it, you can. But that's pretty much the shape of the dress that we need. So now I'm just adding a 1/2 inch seam allowance literally all around the dress. So at the collar, at the shoulder, at the armhole, at the side seams, and also at the hem. And also I just want to take this moment to say that even though I didn't do it, but you can double check your measurements whenever you trace out your clothing or whenever you make a pattern piece, to make sure that the waist is the size of your waist that you need, and also the hips are at the size hips that you need, and all that good stuff. Even the shoulders are the size shoulders that you need, you know, just making sure that it will fit you perfectly. So now I am labeling my pattern piece. So I'm adding 1/2 inch seam allowance all around to just pretty much what I drew, so I know that when I sew it, I sew at a 1/2 inch. Also, I'm labeling that the straight edge of the pattern piece goes on the fold, so I remember, because I've cut something that wasn't on the fold and I regretted it. So just make sure you label it so you know, so you have one full front dress piece and that you cut one. So we're going to cut this pattern piece out and move on to the back pattern piece. And so now we're moving on to the back dress pattern piece, which is ridiculously easy. So you see me cutting out my front pattern piece that I made previously that I ended up using in the video. You know, it hurt when I found out that my clip wasn't recording, or my camera wasn't recording. But anyway, I'm going to flip pretty much the dress over. I don't think you really have to flip it because it's still going to be one whole piece, but I aligned my pattern piece along the straight edge of the other side of the of the paper, and then I'm literally tracing it out because the front and the back are almost the exact same. However, what I'm doing is that I'm taking my turtleneck with the turtleneck stuffed in, and I'm tracing the collar shape of the back of the turtleneck because the collar rises up a little bit higher in the back than it does in the front. So, and this just ensures that it fits your body better. So once you do that, then you add a half-inch seam allowance all around the dress piece, but in the inside instead of the outside, because you traced the front dress pattern piece with the seam allowance on, so you want to add it inside instead of adding extra seam allowance. Because I've taped a whole bunch of papers together, I am reinforcing my actual pattern piece with paper just to make sure that stuff doesn't fall apart, you know, and just make sure that it all sticks together. And I like to do that just for the pattern pieces, so I just don't use extra tape that will eventually be wasted. So after I do that, I'm going to cut the pattern piece out, and then we'll move on to the next one. I also labeled everything too, just to let you know, in case you didn't see that part. Okay, so now we're moving on to the sleeve pattern piece, which is usually the bane of my existence, but this time it turned out well. So we're going to take our turtleneck reference, whatever it is, whatever long sleeve turtleneck you got. We're going to fold the top of the sleeve along the straight edge of the pattern paper, and then we're going to trace it out. And so we're going to trace out, you know, the actual arm part and also the sleeve curve, or the arm, kind of not armhole, but the sleeve curve of the turtleneck. And then so now I straightened out the lines, and then I'm just kind of making everything more seeable for y'all on camera. And then so now I'm adding a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around the sleeve pattern piece. So at the, you know, wrists, at the side seam, and at the top, but I'm out of frame, so I apologize. And then I just labeled everything and cut it out. So now we're moving on to the turtleneck pattern piece, which is literally the easiest pattern piece I've ever made. So I'm going to take my front dress pattern piece and measure the length of the collar. Quarter, and then I'm going to take my back piece, because that might be a different measurement, and then that's going to be 4, so that will be 8 1/4. So 8 1/4 times, that seems like a big ass collar. And then I'm going to measure the back pattern piece collar. Anyway, we're going to take that measurement and we're going to actually draw a line out for that measurement, and then I'm going to draw 6-inch lines kind of perpendicular to that line that we just drawn, so on each side of the line, so it kind of makes like an open square, if you know what I mean. I hope that makes sense. And then we're going to connect those two lines that we just drew, so it makes a whole box. Boom. Rectangle. And then we're just going to add 1/4 inch seam allowances to the top and bottom of that rectangle, and then 1/2 inch seam allowances to the sides of the triangle. Now I forgot to do it but mark that is on the fold as well, on like the side of the box where you drew the 6-inch line, because I did not do that, and so I ended up with 2 collar pieces instead of 1, and so that was a big mistake, and it caused a whole huge situation in the actual DIYing and making of this dress. So now I'm labeling everything, and then of course we're gonna cut it out. I'm sorry for my camera also acting all crazy, because I don't know what's up with her. She's acting all different. So these are the finished pattern pieces. So now well, actually not now, but tomorrow I am going to post the actual DIY of this Doja Cat Say So dress. So look out for that. Please love yourself, and I will see you tomorrow. Mwah!